We're going to now go to our first speaker, who's Leslie. So it's Leslie Sudock from the USA. She was raised in the early years of American feminism in the mid-1970s. She's a wife, 40 plus years, a mother of 2 sons and 2 small grandsons. Leslie's professional training and work has been in the fields of philosophy, law, and historical musicology, and lately art. She's worked as a legal services attorney for the homeless, as a criminal prosecutor, advocating in cases of violence against women and children, appeals court clerk, and court-appointed judge advocate. Leslie spent decades as a semi-professional classical singer and as a fibre artist and community art teacher and leader, with special interest in art as a personal and political expression. So the title of Leslie's talk is Speaking Freely On and Off the Street. And thank you so much for doing this, Leslie. Over to you.
I don't usually talk about my work, I just make it. I'm a doer. And I rarely talk about making art except when I'm teaching someone how to do something. But I thought today, since I usually wear 2 hats, sometimes as an attorney and sometimes as an art teacher or an artist, that I would take the opportunity to share how I think it's possible for us to be effective political artists as speakers, and to do it and to share my thoughts about how to do it persuasively. Most of the work I've ever done has been, until recently, has been through needlework. It's what I was raised with. I'm a woman of a certain age, and that's how I started. That's what I did. I want to just acknowledge the 3 women that I credit with teaching me how to make art in community. So on the left is my grandmother. That's my grandmother in front. That's a film of an image from maybe 1961, 62. That'll be me in the very far left corner, that little girl looking out. That's my family. It's a Jewish holiday dinner in New York. And my grandmother was a community artist. She was, she crocheted, I can't even tell you how many blankets for Jewish refugees after World War II. She was very active, and she taught me how to knit, crochet, and sew, probably all before I was, or by the time I was about 6 years of age. And I learned a lot on my grandmother's lap. In the middle is an image of my friend Catherine Panapacker. She's the tall blonde woman in the middle. And Catherine's a Philadelphia artist, extraordinary artist, a community activist. And if anybody taught me about the power of art as a social practice and a political practice, it would be Catherine Panapacker. I credit her with everything. On the right is my weaving sensei, Miso Jo. I lead a community art studio, a Japanese weaving studio. I learned about this philosophy from Miso sensei and her community in Osaka. And I wouldn't be able to do this presentation without Miso Jo. That work has enabled me to frame what I teach in helpful ways, I think. At least I'm hoping so. I'm a bookish person, so you can't get away. I can't get away without sharing some books. I have 4 basic principles for how to make art in the community. This is what motivates me, and so I'm sharing it. I happen to be a very spiritual person. A lot of us are. My motivation comes from exposure to, at about the age of 14, from Martin Buber's work, I and Thou. So it's a basic tenet of what I do. I try to apply it with respect to everyone, no matter whether I like them, whether I don't, whether I agree with them, whether I don't. Treating people as thous. I'm an atheist, but treating people as thous is a good way to live in the world. The next, number 2, it just describes how we are we are art-making animals. And this has been studied. I came across Ellen Dissanayaka's work when I was in grad school recently. It's terrific work. Her books are just lovely. And if you want to get a sense of, a lot of it's women's art, if you want to get a sense of what kind of animals we are as art-making animals, I recommend her work. My philosophy studies included a very healthy dose of phenomenology and investigation into how we experience things, how we describe what we experience. John Dewey's work and Martin Heidegger's work are really critical to how I think about making art in the world. In fact, that's how I think about most things in the world, direct experience and processing it in certain ways. Martin Heidegger's book is ridiculously impenetrable, but I had to read it when I was in grad school. And he had a central distinction that I want to share, which is the difference with respect to art. The difference between things that are ready to hand and present to hand. And in art terms or in practical terms, it's the difference between a hammer that functions and a hammer that's broken in pieces. We have an emotional or ethical relationship to the things that we can use at the ends of our hands, and we don't to other stuff. And in a way, it's like saying I and thou to the material world. Some things are thous for us, and some things are not. They're utilitarian. And so this has informed everything I do. I've named my studio for it. My studio is called Ready to Hand. So that's Heidegger. And the last will relate to the work I do, and you'll see it in a few minutes. Yifu Tuan's book, if you want to read anything about what it means to be located in the world, I mean, physically located in the world, especially in a place, I would recommend that. It's an extraordinary little book. And then I'll preface everything that's coming by saying most of the artwork I've made in the last 25 years or so, or 20 years, has been about issues relating to Israel-Palestine. I'm an activist against occupation. I have been since I'm a teenager. And so Ben Vinisti's book was very helpful to me in getting me going to make art. And you'll see examples of that. They're coming very quickly. Here's how I frame what we're doing when we make art. I'm speaking about how to do it fluidly, how to do it without impediment, how to do it freely. That's what I mean when I say speak freely with art. It's a simple matter. It's what I teach. It's what I learned to teach from my Japanese teachers. And I'm hoping it'll be useful. I think it's applicable. In Japan, they think it's a peace movement. They think that we take this out into the world. That's why I'm here, taking it to you. To do this, you can't speak through art if you don't know how to do something. So you've got to meet your medium, meet a technique. That's the first thing. I don't usually rehearse what I write in PowerPoint, so I'm only going to do it now. You need to develop skill. I'm going to call it vocabulary, okay, which requires practice and experimentation. There's no way to make art and to become fluent if you don't actually do some of it and do a little bit more and do a little bit more difficult. It's a lot like learning language. To gain fluency, I think even more is required. When I mean fluency, I mean really doing it freely. And to do that, at some point, you need to start thinking intentionally. You need to plan some exercises. You need to maybe take a workshop. Whatever it is, you need to have a focus about developing vocabulary. Maybe try poetry, maybe whatever it is in language. But that's the process. The last thing, have a good idea. Compose and execute and fail. I've included examples of my failures in this presentation so you can see me fail. I'm perfectly happy to show you how I fail. That's it for a quick presentation on how you do it, how to speak freely. Off the street is just private speech, making art on your own, even sharing it. I don't mean legal public speech. Hopefully I'll get to that at the end of this presentation. Here's an example of what I've just said. I said I'm a knitter. I've knitted, I can't even tell you how many hats, mittens, gloves, socks, and so on. I know how to knit. I know how to knit a hat. I took it, developed it, acquired new skills, knit a pair of very, very beautiful mitts, okay? And then applied it in a very interesting way. I participated in a peace flag project. It was an international project, women's organization. I claimed personal reasons. I claimed Burma, Cambodia's flag. I also claimed Palestine. You'll see it in a minute. And applied everything I knew to a new topic. It's just a straightforward application of what I've just shown you in the list. Here's again, a little more humorous, a little serious, other ways of using. There are a lot of knitters here, so I thought I would address this. using knitting to speak politically. These are simple applications, not particularly sophisticated. Stitch for Senate, those of us who were opposed to the Iraq War, gathered together, and it was another person's project. And I made the Senate cap. These are military helmets. I made the one for my states, one of my state senators. It's a straightforward project. It was sent to all the senators. It was effective. It was in the news. Obama, man, a lot of us were very glad to have the opportunity to elect an Afro-American president. And I worked on his campaign, like a lot of people. There was a lot of opposition within the Jewish community to Obama. I didn't share their views. So I made some designs. I was an experienced knitter, I was a teacher. So I made some designs and some items that would help the campaign. Some of them were auction items. Some of them were patterns that they were able to distribute so that everybody around the country, anyone who wanted to knit, to wear their political views were able to do so. And I created the patterns. They were online. They were circulated widely. This is another example. Speaking freely is gaining skill and applying it in a simple way. Speaking persuasively, like in a sophisticated way, in a particularly effective way, and takes a little bit more. And what I think it takes is a commitment, is a different level of commitment. It takes a commitment to your subject, and I mean a personal commitment. I think as an artist, we're most effective when we're seriously, personally committed. It takes commitment to your audience. You have to know your audience, who you're really speaking to. And this is something that I think we ought to discuss. We could discuss in this community more who it is that we really want to talk to when we're talking, especially on the street. I'm not quite sure that we know that all the time, or that all of us do. Medium and materials. The best art is often art that explores its materials or techniques. And I'll show you some examples of that. And again, compose well, have a really good idea, and then get your materials to meet it, execute it well. That's seriously persuasive. I hope that a couple of things that I'll show you in a few minutes, you'll say those are persuasive and you'll understand what I mean. I'm just going to detour and explain commitment, okay? This is my family. This is all we know about that portion of my family. It's my dad's family. And I was given this at the age of 13. It's the only thing that my grandfather had. We know even less about my mother's family. Okay, they came to this country as Jewish refugees fleeing pogroms, like a lot of people. The reason I mention it is this. I was as a child of the 50s and 60s in New York area, I was indoctrinated into American Zionism. So the art you're going to see is about that, and I'm explaining my commitment. Okay, the baby is my grandfather. The older adolescent boy on the right, behind my bearded great grandfather, was his older brother. That's my Uncle Charlie. He brought everybody to this country, the women. He brought his mother and his siblings. They're the only ones that came eventually, beginning of the 20th century. Charlie became a very prominent Jewish cantor in the synagogue system. He was he was nationally known. This is the family that produces artists and musicians. It spits out a singer in most generations. I happen to be one of them. He was what's called conservadox in American Jewish speak, which means he insisted that everyone toe the line religiously. And the family was, I was raised in a Zionist family, let's put it that way. I made that when I was 17, by the way. It's the only thing I have of my art when I was 17. I don't even remember making it, to be honest. Okay. American Zionism 101. Most people, most Jewish Americans don't talk about this. I do. Okay. This is a quick snapshot of how to make an American Zionist. The art that follows speaks to these issues. Okay. The first thing is holidays. This is the picture of the Western Wall in Jerusalem. It's a symbol. We all know it's a symbol. The Jewish National Fund is how, frankly, it's how Palestine was erased. It was covered over. I received a certificate from my grandmother every birthday on Hanukkah. She planted a tree in Israel in my name year after year. Very powerful way of teaching children. It's a little Torah scroll, Jewish Bible scroll. All of us, if we start religious school, are given one of these. We're given a lira, an Israeli dollar, a good luck coin. There these are the ways, the holidays that associate with the Torah, with the Bible, are very powerful in the Jewish community. I was raised American Reform, which is not religious, it's more like a Protestant, but nonetheless, this is how Zionism is taught. Next project, early efforts, basic knitting, maybe a little more than basic, right? Know how, if those of us who knit know, these are just cables. I was asked, I volunteered to do Israel-Palestine. In fact, I claimed it pretty quick, okay? How did I do it? I created something that was very specific about my politics. I put my belief in the knitting together of two peoples, two communities in one place. That's what I thought at the time. I used the technique of knitting to do it, right? And then you can see what the project coordinator sent to me at the end of it. She was ready to take apart the flag and make everybody do it again the way I did it. But that's an application of technique to carry some of the political message. My world changed when this happened. This is Operation Cast Lead. This is the end of 2008, when Israel dropped chemical bombs on Gaza. So I had already been an activist. I had already been a vocal opponent, but this event cost me my participation in the community. I simply turned around and I went into overdrive as an artist. It really catapulted me into trying to speak, because I really didn't know what else to say. I didn't know how to talk to my community anymore. And so this was a pivotal event. That's what a phosphorus flare looks like. When Israel dropped American-made bombs on Gazans, civilians, that's what it does. It's a chemical that, when exposed to air, creates these smoke flares. And then the chemical, which is the payload of this missile, is not always fully spent. And so it falls on people and burns them and does other things, tremendous damage. That's what Israel dropped. That's why the UN issued the Goldstone report against Israel's use of chemical weapons. I'm about to show you art that expresses some of this. During that operation, I was apoplectic. The first thing I did, the first thing I could think of doing, was to perform opposition, perform dissent, much like Zan does with some of her work. I did it at home. Challah making for the Sabbath is a traditional woman's art. I taught it to my sons because I only have sons, and I was a feminist mother. But this is baking Sabbath bread. It's actually a domestic reenactment of an ancient practice of offering. It's called the meal offering that to the priests of the ancient temple. Like a lot of traditions, it got brought into the home. Okay, so I performed it. I made some dough. I documented the entire process. I made some dough. I grabbed some giant cooking chopsticks. I knitted the dough into doves, and then I burned the whole lot in the oven. I just scorched it and created this collage, shared it widely online with friends, did whatever I could to perform a sacrifice. That's the first thing.